This is the Calimesa Insider Podcast, the original Pass Area City podcast, focusing on the ins and outs of your city government at work. And now here's the host of Calimesa Insider, City Manager Will Kolbow.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Calimesa Insider Podcast. Will Kolbow here, and I am so happy and thankful to have our two top public works people in the city with us today, our Public Works Director, Shakir, and our Public Works Superintendent, Coney. Both of you, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Happy to be here.
So, Monty, I'm going to start with you. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, both professionally and personally. And of course, obviously, to the extent there, some people want to be very closed off, and because, we're in the public eye, and so you don't want to reveal too much privately. I understand that, but tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am a California native, born and raised. I've lived in Southern California my whole life, except for 2 years where I lived in Germany. This was in high school while my dad was working on the military base. I also played soccer growing up. I played for Cal State Fullerton as well, and I got my bachelor's and master's in civil engineering from Cal State Fullerton. Before I started my engineering career, I was working in the restaurant industry for a very long time. Started off hosting and busing, and then moving my way up to serving, bartending, and then eventually supervising. I feel like that was a great learning experience for me to be able to, hone people skills as well as managerial skills. Let's see. When I graduated from my bachelor's program, I started working for Charles Abbott and Associates, which is a municipal contract services firm. In 2020, I was assigned to the city of Calimesa in the Public Works Department. So I've been here ever since, but as of a few months ago, I was hired on directly through the city as the city's Public Works Director. Let's see, what else? I love to eat good food and I love to travel a lot. I have been to 6 of the 7 continents, my last one being Antarctica, so I'm hoping to get there soon. Probably not soon, but eventually. But yeah, that is about me.
All right. Kyle, tell us about yourself.
Well, mine's definitely not that extravagant. Pretty much I was the same, born and raised California. I started out over in Rialto, and that's where I pretty much grew up my entire life until I ended up in Rim of the World up in Lake Arrowhead. That's where I graduated high school. I did a lot of football and wrestling when I was up there. From there, it kind of got me into, I did a lot of warehousing and automotive work while I was up there. And it kind of got me into the working field for warehousing. Granted, I started with automotive, ended up in a little tire shop up there in Crestline, a little mom and pop dealership, because there wasn't very many things up there. So it was kind of cool. And then we moved down the hill, down into Hemet. And when I was there, that's when I started working with heavily in warehousing. So I worked with Amazon and Weber Logistics. Weber Logistics is where I got my first superintendent position. I was a supervisor for Weber Logistics, helped open up some of the buildings over in Eastville that they purchased. And then I had my daughter right around that time. And that's when I decided that I needed to do something a little different. Warehousing was taking up a lot of time, 6 days a week, 12 hours. It was a lot. And I missed out on a lot of, my daughter growing up. So I wanted to change. And, my father was always city work. That's how he was born and raised, and he'd worked from 18 all the way until he retired. And I started kind of following in those footsteps. And I ended up landing the position in San Jacinto back in, I think it was 2016. And then just from there, I started going back to school, got my bachelor's in business administrative management. And then I got to Calimesa a little over a year ago as a superintendent, and that's where I'm at right now.
So, you've worked in bigger cities, obviously, before coming to Calimesa. And so we only have a staff of 6, including our director. We do various things in public works, parks, streets, storm drains, traffic signals, facilities, and more. How do you prioritize where the department puts its time and resources? And specifically, how has that been a challenge for you? What are some of the biggest differences you've noticed in being a bigger city, having more staff around you than you do here?
Well, with bigger cities, the main thing is, we have departments for each every aspect. So you have streets department, you have parks department, facilities department, and you have your set of guys who do specifically those jobs. Now, coming to Calimesa, we only have our six staff members. So, 5 of us are out in the field, me included. And a lot of the times we can't get through the entire city. We can't get to a lot of the things because it's not only are we doing streets, but we're doing facilities, we're doing parks, we're doing maintenance, we're doing weed spraying, but we're doing it all as just us rather than having individual departments with individual people sticking to their specific job. So that's one of the biggest things. And it does get hard because we are spread very thin. So trying to get to, those less important things that are still kind of annoying in the, the eye, like, trash on the side of the road, if it's out of the way, but we have a sinkhole or something that's really damaging to the safety of the residents, we have to prioritize those before we do everything else. And, sometimes we can't get to it right away. So spreading ourselves thin and trying to do everything, it gets a little stressful at times, but we do the best we can to make sure that residents are safe.
And you guys do a good job of that. As a department head, overseeing that, what are the challenges that you have, and for time and resources and whatnot?
I would just say that we do have a lot of deadlines when it comes to like reporting for compliance and stuff like that. And so sometimes those do need to get met first and prioritized over other things. If I have to file an annual report with the state or something like that. Just like Kyle said, it's all managing and prioritizing what needs to go first. I will say our maintenance lead, Robert, he does a great job of doing like our weekly schedule with all the tasks on it. But, as Kyle said, all the emergencies or anything that's a safety hazard has to come first. And so sometimes some of those tasks should get pushed back. But the good news is we are working to acquire more equipment and more, software to make our processes more efficient. So we can get more stuff done.
Yeah. So one question I have for both of you, and I'm going to start with you, Madi. A lot of times people don't understand how we function as a city. And I think that because Public Works is such a public facing department, more so than a lot of others, I think sometimes that focus comes in a little bit more on Public Works than it does in other departments. So what's one thing that you wish the public knew about your job and how we do what we do?
I think it's just kind of reiterating what Kyle said is we do not have the staff to have our eyes on every corner of the city and get to everything as soon as it happens. And, we do rely on the public to notify us about some of these things so that we can get them taken care of. But, sometimes some members of the public choose to, instead of coming directly to us, they will either post on social media, or, go directly to city council instead of letting us know first. And sometimes coming straight to us, we can just get the issue resolved a lot faster. I do encourage people to talk to our city council, but like I said, sometimes that can just make things take a little bit longer.
Yeah. And I think that that's where maybe public misunderstanding about how the city functions and the role of the city council versus city staff. Obviously, I think one of the things that people don't understand is like, I'm the city manager, I'm the CEO, right? And so I oversee operations. So and with staff, obviously staff goes out there and actually does the work. And so people, when they go to city council, like you said, they have to, the first thing they're doing is they're just going to come to us anyway. Right. And if obviously they're there to represent the people, and I get that connection, but I think that there's sometimes a perception that the city council is the ones that's actually directing the work when that's not the case. And in social media, I think it takes it even a step further. Social media, and this is maybe just me getting on a soapbox a little bit, but social media sometimes becomes an area where people complain just for the sake of complaining. It's not that they want something fixed. It's that they just want to rattle cages and they want attention. And it's not about fixing things, because putting it, especially like on a public Facebook group that has nothing to do with the city directly, that we may not even be looking at, those things can, depending on what people say, can gain traction and go quote unquote viral before we're even aware of it, because they went to social media as if someone on social media, if it's really about fixing it, what's the point of going to that? I think people need to understand that we're not out there monitoring that, because we're actually out there doing the work, right? As we talked about, we don't have the people to just go out there and just scroll social media to find issues and go take care of them. So that's a very good point. Kyle, what's one thing that you wish the public knew about your job?
Pretty much it's kind of the same thing. We're on kind of the backside of everything. So when they actually call and they call in stuff that they see that we have missed or that we haven't gotten around to taking care of, whether it's trash dump and stuff like that, we love to see that, because it helps us, because we are, spread thin. We can't see the whole city in 1 week. It takes some time, but the consistent calling day after day and continuously bugging when, they probably don't know, hey, we only have 4 or 5 guys and we're trying to do all these other things that are a lot more of an emergency, but you keep on blowing us up every single day saying, hey, there's a piece of trash right here. Once you send it in to us, we have it on the roster. We're ready. We're going to be taking care of it. It just might not be done immediately because we are spread thin. The things that we prioritize is going to be the safety of our residents. So, line striping, if it's starting to fade, we're out there striping a lot now. And all the, stop ahead signs, warning signs, we're getting those replaced as soon as possible now, because they're all fading. You can't see them anymore. These are all things that are we need to complete these so that we keep them safe. Driving and vehicle hazards are one of the biggest things. So our road work and our road safety is one of the top priorities that we have, but them constantly nagging about something that, isn't that big of a priority, that's not going to harm somebody. It's like, we already know about it. You let us know. Let us, take care of it. It might not be immediately, but it will get done. I can promise you.
Yeah. And that reminds me of a mayor that always said, in a city I used to work in, she always saw, public safety as a 3-legged stool. Cause I think when people think about public safety, they think of police and fire, right?
Yep.
But she put public works on par with police and fire as part of public safety. And it's a lot of what you're talking about. It's a lot of those things where the hazards and trying to make sure that our public is safe. If there's an emergency situation, or like you said, safety devices on roads, things like that. And there's a safety component and there's a liability component of that too, right? Because if we're not maintaining those things and something happens, number one, obviously our first priority is to make sure that that doesn't happen. And we want to make sure it didn't happen because we're not taking care of the things that we need to take care of. But if that is the case, then also the city, there's liability for the city, and obviously we're stewards of the taxpayer dollars, so that's going to be a big part of that too. So that's a great point. Kyle, what are some examples of things the public might not realize Public Works is doing behind the scenes to keep the city running smoothly?
Some of the things that we do behind the scenes is a lot of contracted work, things that we have to reach out and get completed. A lot of people don't know this, but like with our fire prevention, getting weeds taken care of, not only is the fire prevention guys doing it, but, they're working with code enforcement to go and, get these business and landowners to kind of come out and, take care of these things. And, a lot of the times people see an open lot and they immediately think, oh, city owns it. And they call us, yelling at us saying, hey, you guys need to do this. And we tell them we're going to, take care of it. We work with the fire department. We work with code enforcement, but those things take time too, but they just it's like a big wheel, it just keeps going around and around. We try to do our best to stay on top of it. Then we're just going to have to keep on doing that, no matter what. But that's something that they need to realize is, we're behind the scenes trying to get everything in the big picture taken care of, not just the little things that they're looking at. So,
yeah. And I think there's a legal component too to that, right? I mean, we are a government agency, so we have to follow the United States Constitution, California Constitution, our local ordinances, and especially on weed abatement, right? That's one of the most frustrating things for people. They see a lot, they think we can just go out and just unilaterally just go out and cut it. And that's not the case, because whether it's a piece of land with a house with somebody living in it, or it's an empty lot that you don't understand, there's no idea who the owner is, they still have, as a private owner, they still have as many rights as anybody else, as somebody that lives at their homes. And that's maybe something that people don't understand. Monty, I wanted to ask you about a couple of things from speaking of behind the scenes. Many residents, we hear this acronym NPDES, right? But a lot of people don't know what it means. And I'm not even sure I fully understand what it means, to be honest with you. So can you explain what this program is and why stormwater compliance is so important for us, for our city?
So NPDES, it stands for National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. And it is a federal program under the Clean Water Act. And it requires or it manages stormwater and prevents the stormwater pollution from getting into our water bodies. Here in California, it is the State Water Board that oversees this program. And so our permit, our NPDES permit, is actually issued through the Water Board. And it lays out different things that we are required to do, such as commercial and industrial facility inspections, construction inspections. We are also required to do street sweeping and catch basin cleaning, along with staff training and annual reporting. We also have to do monitoring and sampling after stormwater events. This is actually managed by that aspect is actually managed by the county. We are on a co-permittee of a regional permit that is managed on behalf of us by the county. So the sampling and monitoring, that part is managed by the county, but everything else, it is managed internally by the city. And it's really important, not only because we want to make sure that our residents or our public has clean water, but we just want to make sure that our neighbors downstream have clean water. And we also want to make sure that we are in compliant to avoid any fines. So the fines can get pretty hefty when you are violating NPDES.
Yeah. And and we've seen, when you say hefty fines, we've seen cities get fined in the six figures, right? I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars, which obviously would be a huge hit to a city like ours. And, you mentioned the Clean Water Act too, and being in compliance with the Clean Water Act. I mean, obviously this is one component of a bigger act, but I think what people don't realize, there's a lot of things that as a city official, there's indemnity and things like that. And, official acts and everything like that. But that's one of those areas that if you're negligent and there's gross negligence, you could be criminally liable for it, right? Like we could go to jail for violations of that. So that's how important it is. Another program that Public Works oversees is has to do with organics and in waste, solid waste. So California has a law, SB 1383, and how we handle recycling, organics, waste diversion. So what does compliance look like in our city, and what should residents understand about how it impacts them? Because I think we're starting to see the audits happening now of trash cans. Like there's actually people going out looking in your trash can, right? And it goes back to this law. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So, I mean, what the residents are really going to see with this law is they have to separate their organics now. So not only green waste, but also food scraps from their kitchen. So that also needs to be separated with the green waste. Yes, there are audits being done. Right now, they are just audits. We are not fining. The regulations do not require us to cite or fine residents who are not separating correctly, but we are required to do the audits now. It may change in the future where we are required to, fine people for not separating correctly. But as of now, it's like I said, it's just the audits. For us, it's just we have to make sure that all the households and businesses are set up to have their organics carts or their organics bins. And we work with CR&R to make sure that they have that service. And then an additional part of the regulations is that our city is required to procure a certain amount of recycled organic product. So that could either be compost or mulch or renewable gas. And that target is set by the population of our city, which is an extremely high target. We're also required, there's other small parts of the regulations that require us to procure a certain amount of recycled paper products. So all of our paper towels here, all of our printer paper, all of that has to have a certain amount of recycled product in it. Another big part of the regulations is edible food recovery. So based on business size and business type, we have some businesses, well, not just businesses, schools as well, that are required to recover their organic food or their edible food product. And so we are required to make sure that all of those covered generators in our city are doing that by making sure that they have their contracts in place and reporting how much edible food that they are donating.
Yeah, so I mean, that's a law that's actually been around for a while, but because of all the components you talked about, that's why the rollout's been so long. And there's a lot of compliance, things that we're having to deal with behind the scenes that's now just starting to make it to the public, but it's not like this is brand new. This has been happening for a while. So my last question for you, Madi, and this is actually maybe for both of you. What do you guys see as the biggest opportunities or challenges for the department over the next few years?
I would say that over the past few years, we have really done a good job of, increasing our capabilities to maintain the city's infrastructure and facilities, whether that be with, adding on more staff and adding on more equipment. So I think we are slowly getting to a good place. But I think maybe fine-tuning our efficiency when it comes to operations and just, working with Kyle and our lead and figuring out how to make ourselves more efficient as we, get more staff on and get more equipment.
Kyle, you've been here about a year now. And so, in that year, what have you learned? And are there things that you've been able to do to, change things up to maybe make us work on more efficient? I guess I've seen it. So, maybe if you can give us a couple of examples.
Well, when I first got here, the amount of equipment that we did have, granted, we did have the equipment there. We got the skids, we had the skid steer, you guys had the UTV, but the usefulness of them were not there because we didn't have the correct attachments to do some of the jobs that we needed to get done. So like us getting the hump patch trailer, and then now we just were able to get the cold planer for the skid steer. We have the broom and the water tank. It's like now we're going to be able to do a lot of grind and overlay of certain areas and be able to get a lot more area of asphalt done. Those patches that, are consistently, making people's day-to-day harder. We're going to be able to take care of all those a lot quicker, but the amount of tools and the equipment that we're here, they just weren't adequate for the jobs that we were doing. The tools that they had, the chainsaws were falling apart, the hedgers were, falling apart. Some of the maintenance wasn't getting done correctly on some of the vehicles and everything. So I kind of had to go through and work with the guys to get a kind of like a streamline of how we need to maintain the equipment and which ones were done, what we needed to replace. We needed to start moving towards battery, to follow the laws that were being put in place in California. So we started buying battery equipment, and we're trying to just stay up in time. But now we're at a good point where, we got a lot of new chainsaws. We got our new equipment. We had that windstorm here a few weeks ago and we were on top of it. We got all the trees taken out that fell down on the roads immediately. I don't even think the president called in, complained about the trees falling because we were out there on top of it right away.
That's great.
I would like to add on to that as well is we have also been on the front end when a developer comes in, we've been working with the other departments more to get ahead and make sure that anything that is constructed is easier for us to maintain. And we see, the Summerlin Park that went in and all of the lights that we have to replace. And so, Kyle's doing plan check. Kyle's doing plan check on these upcoming parks that will be turned over to the city. And he is making sure that, everything that goes in is something that is going to be easier and more efficient for us to maintain.
That's great. Well, I appreciate both of you coming in to do this. I know it's not easy. I know that I'm the city manager, so you're like, well, I guess I got to do it because the city manager said I got to do this. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. You guys did a wonderful job. So I thank you guys so much for joining us. And I'm sure that I know that the public's going to get a lot out of this too. So I really appreciate it. So that's going to do it for the podcast this week. Please join us at our next city council meeting on Monday, October 6th at 6 p.m. right here at the Norton Young Live Senior Center. And actually that's where we're sitting right now. So it's literally right here. You can either attend live or watch us on YouTube at calimesa.gov/YouTube. Also, please make sure that you attend our State of the City coming up this Thursday, September 25th. It'll be at the Plantation on the Lake at 11:30. If you want to get a ticket, you can visit the Calimesa Chamber of Commerce at calimesachamber.com. I'm Will Kolbow. We will see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.